You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WYBC. A lot of breaking news, not a lot of time to get to it, so without further ado, the President of the United States is championing a statement by Hamas, which has now agreed to release all hostages as a sort of acceptance of the president's ultimatum on several Middle Eastern nations, including Qatar, which had privately kind of sheltered Hamas for quite a bit, in ending the Israeli-Hamas war. This is the statement from Hamas, quote, "Out of keenness to end the aggression and genocide being carried out against our steadfast people in the Gaza Strip, and stemming from national responsibility, and in defense of the constants, rights, and higher interests of our people, the Islamic resistance movement Hamas has conducted in-depth consultations with its leadership institutions, broad consultations with Palestinian forces and factions, and consultations with brothers, mediators, and friends in order to reach a responsible position in dealing with U.S. President Donald Trump's plan." The end that they are suggesting, they're not agreeing to the plan entirely. They're not. The plan that's already been signed on and is going into effect, really, whether Hamas wants it to or not, they are not agreeing to anything except the releasing of the hostages. Here's President Trump just a couple of minutes ago.
I want to thank the countries that helped me put this together: Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and so many others. So many people fought so hard. This is a big day. We'll see how it all turns out. We have to get the final word down in concrete. Very importantly, I look forward to having the hostages come home to their parents, and having some of the hostages, unfortunately, you know the condition they're in, come home likewise to their parents, because their parents wanted them just as much as though that young man or young woman were alive.
Again, that's an important thing to remember, that just because a hostage has died at the hands of their captors does not mean that parents members of their church or their synagogue do not want that body returned. Especially in Judaism and Catholicism, having the body is rather important and respectful as well. So it's crucial here. Crucial that the hostages, all of them living and dead at the hands of Hamas, are returned to their families.
So I just want to let you know that this is a very special day, maybe unprecedented in many ways. It is unprecedented. But thank you all, and thank you all to those great countries that helped. We were given a tremendous amount of help. Everybody was unified in wanting this war to end and seeing peace in the Middle East, and we're very close to achieving that.
Now, hang on for a second, because there are a few things here that do need to be pointed out. First and foremost, the original deal proposed by the Trump administration makes it very clear that Hamas is to be exiled completely from Gaza. They're not to be in any leadership position whatsoever. And so Hamas, by essentially saying, well, we're not really accepting the deal, but we are going to release the hostages, this is Hamas desperately, and may I say rather cleverly as well, playing this very last card. Fine, we'll give you the hostages, just don't let Israel attack us and finish the job. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I'm already seeing a lot of speculation from pundits all over the internet saying, well, is Israel going to listen or are they not going to listen? And what is Israel going to say? And boy, is Trump going to comment? I'm going to wait on that one, because I've just got a hunch that some phone calls amid the collection of nations in this particular signed agreement have already occurred by the time you saw statements later today. This brings us to the other big piece of breaking news, and yes, the headline for the show, because it is massive. The Supreme Court has ruled 6-3, along quite a slate of 6-3 decisions, that the Trump administration does not have to honor the previous executive administration, that being Joe Biden's, temporary protected status of migrants, in this case from Venezuela. So as you will recall, Biden, when he was in office, lying dead on Rehoboth Beach in Delaware, whoever was sitting in his chair at the Oval Office pressed the button on the auto pen, which granted temporary protected status to all of these people who came into the United States illegally and then claimed migrant asylum status, even if there was no reason for them to do so. It's like, man, what are all these 20-year-old males from Venezuela doing here at the border? They're like, oh, I'm scared to go home. And it's like, well, yeah, me too. But I mean, my wife still makes me have documents. I'm just going to say the argument that was made by the federal judges that Venezuelan migrants get to stay here because they don't like it at home. Again, I will remind you, there are actual residents of Portland, Oregon, those poor people. You don't just get to go somewhere else and say, well, I'm really, really scared of home, so therefore you need to give me stuff. No, I'm afraid not. And the Supreme Court, in fact, ruled, yeah, the executive branch has the ultimate authority to determine whether or not individuals who have been granted executive privileges maintain those privileges, whether it's being granted security access, whether it's being granted extended Secret Service protection well past the normal standard expiry for a presidential candidate or a vice president, Kamala Harris' case, or in the case of hundreds of thousands of migrants who did not immigrate legally. So the media is losing their marbles over this. NBC News, the way they framed this was the Supreme Court on Friday paved the way for the Trump administration to revoke temporary status for up to, they've changed the number since I read this last. The last time I read this, according to my screenshot, says 300,000 Venezuelan immigrants. NBC has now changed it to 600,000 Venezuelan immigrants. Producer Nick changed the headline on the live stream to 600,000, por favor. That's Spanish for you betcha. Please. Meaning that some could be ultimately deported. Now, here's where things do, in fact, get funny. Ketanji Brown Jackson is mad, which isn't news. Ketanji Brown Jackson, the most liberal and uneducated member of the Supreme Court, who consistently writes her opinions in Crayola, she writes a dissent. And the way that NBC can't even really get out of framing it like this is pretty great. So it says, one of them, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, wrote a dissenting opinion criticizing the court for once again granting an emergency request filed by the Trump administration, as it has done in 20 other cases. Guys, the Supreme Court has now granted an emergency request to the Trump administration 20 times. Why? Because federal judges, at the request bragged about quite openly by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, federal judges appointed by Democrat administrations have thrown out blocks to various Trump orders on things that are constitutionally part of the president's purview. Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote, let me a little background music for the very important Ketanji Brown Jackson here. She wrote, quote, I cannot abide our repeated, gratuitous, and harmful interference with cases pending in the lower courts while lives hang in the balance. I dissent, she wrote. Brave, stunning, powerful. She found 3 words that sounded impressive to her and scrawled them out. Not in cursive, but, crayon. Moving on to the next important piece of news. The Attorney General nominee for the Democrats upcoming in the Virginia elections, Jay Jones, according to a new report from the National Review, fantasized about shooting the former Virginia Republican speaker. Quote, he receives both bullets. And because we love receipts here on the Tony Kinnett cast, yes, we do in fact have those text messages ready for you to see here. So Jay wrote, hence the glowing tributes from the Republicans. Dang, that was for Mark. Sorry, Charlie. He wrote this to someone else. He said, talking about Joe Johnson, a Democrat, but basically a Republican, he leaked everything to your caucus. It's why Gilbert gave him such a glowing tribute. The guy that's texting him back says, I knew what you were talking about. And so then Jay goes into a really, really weird, psychotic string of text messages where he says, if those guys die before me, I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves, send them out awash in something. And the guy says, Jay Jones, like, dude, really? He says, 3 people, 2 bullets. Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. So he says the former Virginia speaker, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. And the guy says, Jay, please stop. Radio crew, we got to send you to the commercial. We'll continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. Now, by the way, he doesn't stop there. He continues. He said, you weren't simply asking questions. You know what said I genuinely was? I was just asking questions. No, you weren't trying to understand your logic. You were talking about hoping that Jennifer Gilbert's children would die. And he responds, and I quote, yes, I've told you this before. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. He also says, quote, I do think Todd and Jennifer are evil and that they are breeding little fascists. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Democrat candidate for Attorney General in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So you might be wondering, well, what about Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat candidate for governor currently? Again, you have just heard that man call for and excitedly describe the death of the former Speaker of the House, then wife and children. The murder of, I should be very clear there, not just the death of, the murder of. So this is what the Democrat candidate of Virginia for governor had to say. Quote, after learning of these comments earlier today, I spoke frankly with Jay about my disgust with what he had said and texted. I made clear to Jay that he must fully take responsibility for his words. What I have also made clear is that as a candidate and as the next governor of our Commonwealth, I will always condemn violent language in our politics. Oh, gee, thank you. The highest law enforcement official in the Commonwealth of Virginia, possibly, if this goes in Abigail Spanberger's direction. She gave him a stern talking to, not he needs to resign. He's called for the murder that he said he would happily participate in of someone in the Virginian legislature. He doesn't even lie. It's not even someone who's committed a crime. It's not someone on the national stage you can say, oh man, again, it would still be bad if he had listed just some random Republican. Someone in Virginia, just in state legislature, and his wife, and the kids. Go ahead, producer Nick.
Also, implicitly in his statements, he's supporting violent action, aka terrorism, because it takes personal loss for people to move policy. Aka, it takes terrorism for people to actually do what you want.
That's what you want from the Attorney General, right? The one who is in charge of deciding whom the state prosecutes, what the state investigates, who is in charge of the state police.
And then we wonder why some police forces, such as Portland, act the way they do.
It's interesting you bring up Portland, producer Nick, because, I'm just sitting over here looking through some of the various news reports coming out of Portland right now. And after we reported yesterday that the Portland City Council had intervened to keep police from stopping active battery and assault by Antifa members. Now when I see the police instead arresting independent journalist and friend of the show, who I reported side by side with at the DNC in Chicago, Nick Sortor. Instead, with an attorney general like that, gee whiz, how could something like that happen? This is how that could happen. When you elect this filth to higher office, that's what you get. I don't want to hear, I do not want to hear it about the Trump administration gleeful about the prosecution of James Comey. I just don't feel bad. Because the leading contenders for major elections are openly, excitedly texting people about murdering them and then pissing on their graves of not just the guy, but his wife and his children, breeding little fascists. Not all free speech is equal. It's not. Not all speech is equal. It isn't. The idea that that's just the same as some kind of political expression of others in power, get out of here. If you believe in that kind of nonsense, again, at a time when more Americans than ever believe in solving political differences through violence, I don't want you anywhere near me, my family, or in the public discourse, period. Now, up next, we're going to talk a little bit about the shutdown shenanigans and the rhetoric even getting little hot there, as well as a couple of other stories, including Nick Sortor. Very full show tonight. We're going to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Well, the U.S. Senate was in session today, one more time before the weekend, and wouldn't you know it, the vote failed again. The vote to reopen the government failed. So there were two bills that were put forward. There was the Democrat bill that had, well, you're going to see what the Democrat bill had in it for funding here in just a minute, thanks to the gracious presentation of Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, or as I like to call him, the old Southern grandpa in your Baptist church with an axe to grind. Incredible. And then the Republicans again tried to pass the clean resolution, and the same thing happened as last time. Republicans, with the exception of, I believe it was Murkowski, voted in favor of the clean resolution, and they were joined by John Fetterman, Democrat of Pennsylvania, independent, who caucuses with the Democrats, Angus King of Maine, and Cortez Masto of Nevada, who is very, very worried about swing elections in the 2026 midterms. By the way, for all of the polling conversations that are very sketchy polls, I've actually looked at some of the polling data and the questions that people are being asked about who they're blaming for shutdown stuff right now. If you had Republican senators in swing districts, in swing states, who were rushing over to say, well, let's negotiate, let's work with the Democrats, I would believe you that the Republicans were seen as to blame for the shutdown. But seeing as Schumer shutdown is the number one trending term regarding the shutdown on every social media platform, well, we haven't checked MySpace, but including LinkedIn, it's the number one trending term. Also, you have Democrats defecting to vote with the Republicans out of fear of swing district stuff. Pennsylvania, Nevada, it's not looking too good. Now, what did Senator Kennedy find in the bill that Democrats had put up today? It's certainly something. $3 million for circumcisions and vasectomies in Zambia. $833,000 for transgender people in Nepal. $4.2 million for LGBTQ people in the Western Balkans and Uganda. $3.6 million for, you ready for this? Pastry cooking classes and dance focus groups for male prostitutes in Haiti. Or as I like to call it, a Democrat intern training session. Because of the gay sex party and the Democrat Senate staffers thing. Yeah, that's a real thing as well. $500,000 for electric buses in Rwanda. $6 million for media organizations for the Palestinians. Wow. $300,000 for a pride parade in Lesotho. That's the one that Trump was like, where the heck even is that? And then my personal favorite, again, in this continuing resolution, what the Democrats wanted funding for here. $882,000 for social media and mentorship in Serbia. Listen here, pal. If you're from Serbia and you need some social media mentorship, you grab a couple pierogi, a Molotov cocktail, and I'll mentor you, my dude. I got your back. Now, in the meantime, because yesterday, the Democrat leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, they went from having 6-7 interviews on October the 1st to 0 interviews on the 2nd. It was really, really weird. Well, today they got a little bit. Hakeem Jeffries is still hiding. If he pops out and sees his own shadow, it's 6 more weeks of shutdown. But someone said that he's probably out drinking with Kamala. Tequila, of course, because, the sombrero. And then Chuck Schumer, he went on with Jake Tapper this morning. Now, regarding Jake Tapper, he may not be someone that I consider to be the most reliable anchor when it comes to reporting, but every once in a while, when it is politically expedient to him, Tapper smells blood in the water. And just for the fun of it, maybe just because, Tapper's, I don't know, you need a little excitement now and again. You get tired at, reporting on Trump stuff. Jake Tapper kind of forced Hakeem Jeffries to admit that even the Democrat leadership lie that this had nothing to do with illegal immigrants was too much. Chuck Schumer, knowing that happened, then went on with Jake Tapper earlier today to try and sell the whole thing. Only Tapper came out of the gate swinging, and here's Schumer trying to respond.
So Republicans are obviously, their talking point is that Democrats want to give health care to illegal immigrants. Now, the Trump administration, when I asked them, what are you talking about? They said they're referring to this section in the Democratic stopgap funding proposal. It would repeal the section of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that addresses Medicaid, specifically one provision, reduced federal reimbursement for emergency Medicaid for hospitals. And some of that obviously goes to people who don't have insurance, including undocumented immigrants. And
Jake, it's all a lot of bull. Not a single federal dollar. Not a single federal dollar goes to undocumented immigrants. Not for Medicare, not for Medicaid, not for ACA.
There you go. Jake shows him this exact provision, which essentially allows the federal government to reimburse states via Medicaid. If an illegal immigrant goes to the first of all, if you go to the emergency room tonight, first of all, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg, no pun intended, for the ambulance. And then they're going to charge you for every microsecond you're sitting in the emergency room. That is a very large bill. If you're an illegal immigrant and you are in the states of Illinois or Minnesota, we have an entire map from Newsweek, like 14 different states that all happen to be very, very, very blue. The federal government covers your emergency room visit. I don't get that. I don't. Nor should I. Actually, I'm not sure as a member of the Cherokee tribe officially, if I actually get reimbursement on emergency room visits. I wouldn't take it though, because that's ridiculous. Pay for your own visits. That's just something I think that is a natural expectation. So Schumer gets out here in front of the public and he says, it's all BS, Jake. Even the stuff you're saying didn't happen. Yeah, Tapper doesn't let that slide.
Are you disputing that the addition of the money, the emergency Medicaid money to hospitals, that none of that goes to undocumented immigrants? I mean, I thought it was
no federal dollar is allowed by law to go to undocumented immigrants. It's been on that, and they just came up with this recently because they're afraid to talk about the merits.
Oh, the merits. The merits. Is not where the funding goes one of the merits of the proposal? Again, Democrats already voted in favor of this before. Now they're upset because Obamacare super COVID dollars are sunsetting. Remember that? It's just temporary spending for COVID. Oh, it's momentary. Yeah, Yeah, bridge to sell you. My favorite part, though, because here's how you know they've reached the bottom of the barrel. I can't even tee this up. This is amazing.
Well, first, we received another blow when the House, Speaker Johnson, said the House isn't going to be in session next week. They seem to care more about protecting the Epstein files than protecting the American people and their health care. But even more outrageous is the fact that they're going home and they're getting paid.
It's the Epstein files. See, they're not giving money to Juan because who knows if Epstein was also getting dollars to the Medicare. I quick, get Chuck Schumer off the air. Pull him. They got like the old shepherd's crook and like pulled him, yanked him off the stage. Said, you got to say you just can't hear things again, Chuckles. My goodness. Radio crew, we got to send you to the commercial wall on the live stream. We continue with the Russ Vogt Warpath. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, Russ Vogt, he's having the time of his life. I'm pretty sure one of my friends walking by his office today did in fact hear Time of My Life from Dirty Dancing blasting from his office. And that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, while the White House is furloughing a third of its staff, all Department of Government Efficiency employees will stay on, along with Russ Vogt's 437 Office of Management and Budget staffers. Why? Because they're hacking and they're slashing. It's harvest time, ladies and gentlemen, and Russ Vogt is here to party. Here we go. $2.1 billion in Chicago infrastructure projects, specifically the Red Line extension and the Red and Purple modernization project, have been put on hold to ensure funding is not flowing via race-based contracting. More info to come soon from the U.S. Department of Transportation. This is why whenever Democrats get in front of the country and go, well, these are our state dollars. You can't touch me. The grants have already been assigned. You can't touch me. Well, how the turntables. It turns out that when Brandon Johnson got in front of the country and said, yeah, we're going to hire black and women individuals other than anyone else. You're a black man? Too bad. You're a white woman? Too bad. You're a Hispanic non-binary person? You're one of like 2 in the entire country. But Brandon Johnson's not going to hire you. He only hires black women from his own mouth hole. Now that seems like racial discrimination. And so now that the government is shut down, Russ votes like, hey, we have some expanded federal powers here. Sure would be a shame if I snapped my fingers like Uncle Sam's Thanos and wiped away that funding until the shutdown ends. And this is going to put the screws to Democrats by the end of it. The media is furious in the meantime that Donald Trump, his entire administration, his cabinet, really just doesn't care that they're mad about sombreros and memes and other things. Caitlin Collins said this pretty overtly.
So we played sound from Vice President Vance, not just defending that AI racist video of Minority Leader Jeffries wearing a sombrero, but also like celebrating that video. And it was playing on a loop in the briefing room today. What are you hearing from the inside about that?
It was not only just playing on a loop in the briefing room. If you've never been in the press briefing room, for those who haven't, there are loudspeakers overhead so you can hear announcements or what's being said, or if there's an event going on with the president in the Rose Garden, for example.
By the way, the press room also smells terrible. It's essentially any small town community center wedged into a semi-disposable space next to the White House, as it should be. Yeah, it's a dumpy place. And so I love the arguments of decorum in the press room. It's like, honey, I don't even think they'd allow this kind of a set to be built to air on like the smallest Studio B community channel from the 70s.
They were playing that mariachi music as well over the loudspeakers for all the press that was coming in and out of the White House today inside the press briefing room. It just kind of gives you a window, John, into how they're dealing with this and how they believe they have the upper hand when it comes to the messaging here.
They do.
And also kind of how things have changed from the first time Donald Trump was in office. I mean, there was a shutdown then. I remember all 35 days of it. As the president said at the beginning, he'd be proud to shut the government down. And then it ended, obviously, with him not getting the money for his border wall. This time, you know, there's a moment here. They're being heavily criticized over these posts by the president, by Democrats. And instead of backing off or apologizing for it, they're leaning into it, and they're playing the music over loudspeakers and on repeat inside the briefing room because they simply don't care about that criticism.
They don't care. Good. That's what I voted for. That's absolutely. Oh, no one's caring about what the MSNBC harpies are yelling at the screen. Oh, no. We got to bring the radio crew back because it's time to talk ICE and some arrests. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Yeah, that's right. It's a little cops theme here for you. So we got some good, some bad, and some really awkward in the law enforcement side of things. We are going to start by talking about the bad. Over in the United Kingdom, an update from Chief Constable Sir Stephen Watson, because, you know, the Brits are ridiculous. Anyway, this press statement is truly gross. It's really horrific. So it says an update from Sir Stephen Watson following yesterday's tragic incident on Middleton Road in Crumpsall. So allow me to fix that. An update from the chief of police following the terror attack in Manchester. As you recall, the individual Jihad al-Shami, yes, Jihad al-Shami, drove through barriers, drove through a crowd of people, and then got out and stabbed and killed two Jews at the synagogue. Now, there is a little bit of new information, so we're gonna get to this in order. The update from the chief of police, their head constable, whatever. Following the terrorist incident yesterday at the Heaton Park Hebrew congregation, further and urgent inquiries continue. Overnight, we've taken advice from the Home Office pathologist ahead of full post-mortem examination scheduled for later today. What did they find? They found that when the British police showed up to the scene of the terror attack, that the officers shot Jihad? No. The police officers shot two of the Jews that Jihad was trying to kill. According to the early medical reports, kind of a pseudo coroner's report, one of the dead individuals died from the gunshot, not the terrorist stabbing them. The other person that they shot is in the hospital and is still in pretty urgent condition. The Brits showed up. They shot 2 Jews. And how did the press frame it? Oh, an update on the incident and the inquiries. Our thoughts and prayers remain with all the families, the wider community impacted by this incident, and care for all those directly affected, including our brave first responders. Well, your brave first responders showed up and shot 2 of the victims. The United Kingdom, ladies and gentlemen. Also, it should be noted because, this also came out today. Jihad al-Shami, he was out on bail for rape. Producer Nick.
This just goes to show, UK, you can take your stance on guns and shove it. The whole idea that only certain officers are allowed to carry guns on duty to respond to these things because they're more professional or more trained.
Yeah,
no,
you can't
get that out of here.
You can't even shoot the large Muslim man stabbing the Jews. You shoot, by the way, I've seen the pictures of the victims. These aren't like big, beefy, brolic Jewish dudes that are the same size. You have this Islamic dude the size of a refrigerator. The officers couldn't hit him. Instead, they shot 2 of the smaller Jews he was stabbing. Excellent. Way to go, United Kingdom. Stellar stuff. Here over in the United States, the Antifa groups continue to attempt assaulting ICE. In Chicago and Broadview, there are multiple operations being carried out in Midway Blitz, and the crowd is assaulting ICE and Border Patrol because of it. Here you go. So you see punches being thrown. It looks like they try to hit one of the officers with a bottle. The cops do start getting in. Now, a cool tip here for police chiefs and city councils who apparently now can give orders to police departments and mayor's offices who are supposed to give orders to police departments. You know that you can push back rioters who are assaulting police officers on camera. You can do that, or you can pull the individual forward, and then you can slap these really cool silver devices on their wrists called handcuffs, and then you arrest them. And then you don't have to push them back anymore because they're on the ground. We're going to cover some of that here in a bit because right now the Attorney General's office is getting involved in a situation over in Portland where the Portland Police Department arrested not Antifa, who had been assaulting, punching, just open acts of battery and arson on camera all evening. But Portland police then ended up moving in and arresting independent journalist and a friend of ours, Nick Sortor. Here is the clip of the police arresting an independent journalist, literally just filming. Hey. So they're arresting him. Do you see any of the Antifa members in cuffs? Absolutely not. The bicycle brigade, the cavalry has rolled up to arrest Nick for what? Well, they said that according to some earlier reports, they were acting on some tips. They said, let's see, the Portland Police Bureau was aware of public interest following several arrests made during demonstrations on the South Waterfront on the night of October 2nd. Among those arrested was an individual known to have significant social media presence. He's a journalist. You don't actually need a journalism degree and some major network name on your nipples in order to be treated as some super serious journalist. Sure. So the Portland police says, as with all such situations, arrests are based on observed behavior and probable cause, not political affiliation or public profile. He said formal charges will be determined by the Multnomah County District Attorney Office. So what they are claiming to have arrested him for is for getting a little rowdy with the Antifa crew. Why were the Antifa crew getting rowdy? Here's the video here. So you can see the Antifa crew setting an open fire in public. And that, again, right now you are not allowed to incite violence in a riot by lighting things on fire. That's not allowed. And there is an executive order reinforcing that. It's not an act of political speech when you are using fire as an arsonist tactic to stoke additional acts of violence. So Nick comes in, he takes the flag on fire, and he starts stamping out the fire. And what happens? What happens? Well, the Antifa crowd runs up and starts throwing punches at him. And so then Nick, throwing return punches back, defending himself. Then he gets arrested by the Portland Police Department. Now, did the Portland Police arrest those throwing the punches at Nick? No. No, they don't. Do they arrest any of the other Antifa? No. If you're carrying a half trash can that's got the Antifa flags painted on them, the cops don't touch you in Portland. But you're an independent journalist covering things, they'll say, well, prominent social media with political... Incredible. Now, Assistant Attorney General Harmie Dillon, in charge of the Civil Rights Division for the Department of Justice, she's not happy with this. And essentially writes a letter immediately, making it clear that the United States might, in fact, have violated the law by essentially upholding policing actions based on political viewpoint. She says, your immediate attention to this matter is required. We write regarding Portland Police Bureau's response to incidents surrounding ICE facility in Portland, and specifically the city of Portland's use of its policing powers in a manner that may be based on viewpoint discrimination. This has been admitted to by the City Council of Portland, who is apparently giving orders to the police. She says specifically 3 issues have been brought to the attention. Arrest of individuals who were defending themselves from riots like Nick Sortor. Also, failing to identify or arrest individuals who allegedly assaulted Katie Davis Court from the Post-Millennial. A horrible gash and bruise on her face. And then the city of Portland repeatedly using its policing powers through zoning enforcement actions to try to limit immigration customs enforcement's use of federal property, which also you can't do. And that's just with Portland. There's other major law enforcement court news around the country. According to my colleague Tyler O'Neill, the FBI has officially cut all of its ties with the Southern Poverty Law Center. That is very big. The Southern Poverty Law Center has accumulated massive sums of money in order to call various groups that are not extreme in any way, shape, or form. The Family Research Council, focused on the family, as hate groups alongside the KKK. The FBI has cut all ties with them. Also, Nicholas Rosk, the transgender attempted assassin of Justice Brett Kavanaugh of the Supreme Court, has been sentenced to 8 years. Additionally, Sean Diddy Combs has now been sentenced to 50 months, 4 years, in prison for violence and sexual crimes. Now, as I've said here on the show, and actually I'm going to send the radio crew over to commercial for this. We'll see you guys in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. As I've said repeatedly on this, the reason that as a federal executive branch, you need to be very careful about how you treat certain indictments, how you treat the prosecution of certain crimes. When they levied the RICO charge at Sean Diddy Combs, when they said, oh, we're going to charge you with racketeering and all this extra stuff, and then they couldn't prove it, they ended up losing a ton of the other stuff. It is far better in a legal battle to go for what you know you can prosecute and convict on, rather than trying to go for the really fancy charge that sounds good, because social media has essentially taken everything and made it superflative. And also invested in superlatives. You like that? So the idea of saying it's not enough to be good, it has to be better, it has to be best. It's not enough for Diddy to be charged with assaulting minors. He has to be charged with trafficking and racketeering and like pimping them around everywhere. Well, if you don't have the stuff you need to convict him, he's going to get away with 4 years in prison. By the way, George Santos, the representative of New York, who lied and committed some financial crimes, 87 months in prison. Sean Diddy Combs, the abuser of minors, 50 months for violence and sexual crimes. George Santos, 87 months in prison. Interesting stuff. Now, it's rather interesting that amid this, we get another report, this time from ABC News, as well as a couple of other reporters in the area, that the prepared terrorist attack, that when President Trump was set to be in New York City to speak at the United Nations, that terrorist attack, which was to cripple the entire cellular internet network in New York City, a ton of server racks with a bunch of SIM card manipulation, that kind of thing. These 300 SIM servers and 100,000 SIM cards in that electronic planned terrorist attack that was thwarted by the Secret Service, yeah, it turns out it was China. This was a coordinated terror attack by the Chinese. Quote, federal agents discovered additional locations and more equipment as they worked to determine the ultimate goal of what the Secret Service said was a China-linked plot that could have crippled every cell tower in the nation's largest city, jammed 9/11 calls, and unleashed chaos. I would very much encourage the administration to take the hardest possible line against China, because they are just going to continue open, blatant terror attacks through encouraging narco-terrorism, funding and supplying narco-terrorism through our open, now shut southern border, or our open shipping system in this country, or concurrently, the planned terror attacks in cities like New York to cripple the entirety of United States infrastructure. Law enforcement in this country right now is crucial. It's crucial. There are actors that are seeking to do harm to Americans at large. Whether they be foreign nations, whether they be groups inside the United States funded by NGOs or on their own, whether they be mentally ill or radicalized, they are seeking to do harm. Whether they are individuals who are mentally ill and slaughtering Mormons, literally the most hardworking, kind-hearted people who, by the way, have now raised over $300,000 for the shooter's family, the guy's wife and young kid that were left behind with special needs, because that's how nice Mormons are. Meanwhile, the other groups in this country are seeking to murder any way that they possibly can. We'll bring you right back with something more uplifting from the Atlanta Falcons. Tim Green, excellent story on ALS. You're not going to want to miss it. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Cut over now to the man who made the Dallas Cowboys fear the defensive tight end from the Atlanta Falcons. We've got Tim Green, and not only a major success story with the Falcons, the reason that, our defensive coach yelled at other players on my middle school football team when I was a kid, but more importantly, later a very successful radio and TV personality, of course, the 05 revival of A Current Affair, and then in 2018, hit with ALS. And really just kind of the first question that we've got here over from the Tony Kinnett Cast crew. What does a diagnosis like that do to you and your family? How did you guys take that?
First, Tony, I wanted to say thank you for having me on the show. That's a good question, and I like your style of getting right to the deep stuff. In 2016, I was told I had 6 months to live. It was horrible for my family and our mental health. My first reaction was to just bury my head in the sand and pretend it wasn't happening. Eventually, my family convinced me to go to Massachusetts General Hospital, where I am getting world-class care. Once my ALS progressed, where I started losing everything physical, like walking, hugging, eating, drinking, and eventually even talking, my first reaction was to point the finger. My spiritual life suffered severely, and I started saying things like, God, why me? I was in the pit of despair and honestly having suicidal thoughts. Then I woke up one morning and the Spirit spoke to me. It rang out in my head and it told me to calm down and that this was God's plan for me. And I was being given a second chance. At that point, I had already accepted Jesus as my personal Savior, but it was a one-way street. I was a selfish, sinful, and undercover Christian. What God was giving me a chance to do was repent. I was lost, but now I am found. immediately those physical things that I missed fell away. And my family's attitude and support has been nothing short of phenomenal. I couldn't do this without them.
Wow, that's incredible. I don't know if I could really point to some kind of a diagnosis coming in just like a sledgehammer like that, especially after such a huge broadcasting career and life, and being able to take that and turn it into something huge for your faith. I'm just curious here. So since that period of diagnosis, has this helped grow your faith? Like what has it meant for you, for your faith?
At first, my biggest fear was death itself. After being told I had as little as 6 months and at best 3 years to live, in that moment, my prayers became a list of milestones. I'll give you an example using my 2 youngest kids. I prayed to see our daughter graduate from Harvard. When she got engaged, I prayed I could make it to her wedding. Then I prayed to live long enough to see her first child born. With our youngest son, my prayers were to visit colleges with him, help guide his decision, see him graduate from high school, and move him into his freshman dorm. I even started praying for milestones with my work. I prayed I could finish the book I was working on before I lost the ability to use my eyes. Then at that time, I prayed to complete final season, the story of my battle with ALS, and my last season of coaching football, which by God's grace became a #1 New York Times bestseller. I prayed I could glorify Jesus through writing Rocket Arm, and that I could live long enough to raise a significant amount of money for ALS research. God answered those prayers. Now I have a new list. I pray I'll see our youngest graduate from college get married and have children. I pray I can finish my next book, which imagines Christianity as a kind of superpower, which it is. And finally, I pray for a cure. I would love to have the opportunity to tickle my grandchildren and kiss my wife again. Anyways, that's a lot of praying. But each prayer has been answered with blessings, and my faith has only grown stronger through it all.
I love that. I love that. Praying in milestones. My friend, he has his dad's rather sick, best friend of mine all growing up, and he told me the same fear that he had that his dad would not get to see them have kids, and so they prayed that his dad would be around just long enough for him to see their first kid, and he's still around. Their kid's 8 and 9 months now, and I definitely know the look of joy on his face at getting to be on the other side of those milestones. And just listening to the way that you do talk about your faith is incredible. It is, because there's a level of casual Christianity that's really taken the country, of course, over the last couple of decades. But again, I think that idea you're talking about it as a superpower, and of course through all of your writing, which we'll definitely get to, that's pertinent, it's necessary, and again, it is a true fact of those who have been through the worst and the lowest, that there is no other point that the peace from the Comforter is such a blessing and a necessary force to keep you going. But it's a little unusual talking like this with you because, again, with ALS, normally it's a very robotic voice, it's very slow communication, and yet you're using kind of a AI in a way that it's never really been used before to speak for you, to speak through you with this voice. My question is, how did you even come to AI as a possible solution for your communication issues with ALS? My wife has a family member with ALS. I don't believe I would have ever guessed to suggest AI for such a thing.
It's a really hot topic right now. Just using those 2 letters seems to make everyone perk up and pay attention. I think there are 2 ways to use AI when it comes to ALS. First, using it for things like my voice. I cannot explain to you how nice it is to be able to sound like me again. My son Troy was at a business conference, and someone was pitching him on this software he could use to do 100 sales calls at once in his own voice. He asked a few questions about how they made the voice, and that led to us using old audio I had and turning it into this voice you're hearing right now. Pretty cool. On the medical side, the hope is that AI can be used to synthesize millions of ALS data points to find trends and more specific treatments. Right now, it's just called ALS. In the future, I imagine it will be broken up, kind of how cancer is, breast cancer, skin cancer, colon cancer, etc., rather than just being called cancer. On a personal note, your wife's family members should look into 11 Labs. It's been amazing, and it's free for people with ALS as part of their support for our podcast, Nothing Left Unsaid.
Whoa, I didn't realize that 11 Labs, we've used it before. I admittedly for much more trivial things. I made Jordan Peterson's voice read the first chapter of The Hobbit, but I will actually. I'll tell my wife about that. That's a pretty cool thing that you guys have been able to do with 11 Labs. That's pretty neat. Now I've put this off long enough, and I have had I had a couple of minutes to flip through some of Rocket Arm, and the first thing that hits me is that it's a sports novel that's not, forgive me, it's not boring. So many sports novels are the people like put together kind of at the after part of their sports career. They're either very thinly veiled stand-ins for what they wish their own career was like, or it's just really bad writing. This is something that I found myself turning pages quicker and quicker. And I got to say, because it's geared towards, kids, I'm excited to actually give this to our kids as we get to a certain point where I think that, my son, for example, will be able to understand it. Tell me about Rocket Arm. Not like you're telling somebody about the book on like a network TV hit, but my kid complaining they've got nothing to read. That kind of a crew. Tell me about Rocket Arm.
The first thing I say to kids is that everyone likes reading. If you don't think you like reading, you just haven't found the right book yet. Give a book a couple of chapters. If you don't like it, grab a different one. There are no bonus points for forcing yourself through a book. Think you can't find anything good to read? Rocket Arm might change your mind. It's the story of Zeno Fife, a 12-year-old with a quarterback arm so powerful reporters call it a rocket. He leaves one football program and jumps into a brand new school where he becomes a superstar. But things get complicated fast. His coach is kind of mysterious. People say he can heal players. Is it voodoo? Is it hypnosis? No one's sure. But when the newspapers get hold of the story, it explodes into controversy. Meanwhile, Zeno is sneaking out at night with his friend Rachel to search for treasure in the swamps right before the biggest football game of the year against their undefeated rival, IMG. With his team's perfect season, a coach's career on the line, and a shocking discovery in the swamp, Zeno has to figure out what matters most: winning, friendship, or something bigger. If you want nonstop action, deep mystery, and a story that actually makes you think, you'll want to grab Rocket Arm.
If I may, there was an era of kind of American novels and TV movies that actually were engaging, that actually got you into the story itself. This is one of them. We're going to link that down in the description below. It's not a return to form. It's surpassing the prior form, I'd say. And realistically, Tim, an absolute joy to see you doing the work that you're doing right now. Again, still writing, communicating as clearly as you are. The AI work is excellent. Your legacy is incredible. Cannot thank you enough for stopping by today to talk with us a little bit about what you've been through and kind of what's on the horizon.
Tony, thanks again for having me on. I hope you got everything you needed. We started doing a podcast recently, so I know it's not easy what you're doing here. I appreciate it.
That's very, very kind. That's very kind. I really, really appreciate it. All right. We do have one quick thing before we get to the bonus tonus section of tonight's show that I think is really, really relevant regarding the individual Nicholas Rosk, who was going to take part in that attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court. The judge in that particular case, Boardman, a Biden appointee, this is according to Fox News, said that she had factored into the sentence her concern about Trump's executive order requiring transgender inmates to be detained in prisons that correspond to their sex at birth. So the judge limited the sentence of the individual who was going to attempt an assassination of Brett Kavanaugh, the would-be Kavanaugh assassin, Nicholas Rosk, to just 8 years in prison. The Department of Justice was asking for 30 years in prison. Why? Well, partially because the guy's like, oh, I'm a transgender, I'm a woman now, and would have had to serve in a male prison. Biden's judges, ladies and gentlemen. Incredible stuff. Well, we do have some interesting other kind of news and points. I've been asked about this a little bit over the last week. Brylan Hollyhand, who is a young conservative speaker who has, like a lot of conservative speakers, gone around the country quite a bit in the last couple of weeks after the assassination of our friend Charlie Kirk to expand the reach of diverse, independent thought, free speech on college campuses, and having honest discussions with people on college campuses, because that's the work that Charlie believed in. And there are individuals that are taking up that microphone collectively to push that mission further and with, I'll say, as much passion that Charlie had for these particular events. So Brylan Hollyhan is one of these guys. And the Daily Beast wrote an article that was published, I guess, today, exposing Brylan. Oh, they got him. It says, the teen MAGA speaker asked for thousands of dollars plus coach class airfare and expenses to speak at a fake college event. So the headline, or at least the tweet of this, makes it sound as though Brylan knew there was some kind of a fake college event that was going on that was going to use to try to get travel expenses and a speaker fee for. That's what the headline appears. Because when I read the article, that's what I was expecting to read. Is that what happened? No. The actual article says that, first of all, the way they frame him is truly disgusting. Brylan Hollyhand, 19, has presented himself as an heir to the murdered Turning Point USA founder. No, he has not. Dubbed himself the heir to Charlie Kirk. Grossly dishonest. But, alas, here's the sting, the fake event that I'm being told about. The outlet, the Daily Mail on Thursday, caught his agent asking for thousands of dollars plus expenses to speak at a fake college event. What's this fake college event? The outlet posed as a college student trying to book Hollyhand and emailed Premier Speakers Bureau, a publicist agency, which connects speakers and organizations. A representative for the agency wrote back, well, Brylan's normal fee is $7,500 plus coach class airfare and expenses for two. Is this within budget? And they're essentially treating this as like some huge expose, because Brylan had made it clear before that for young Republican chapters and small TPUSA and YAF chapters, things like that, young conservative chapters in colleges across the country, often he doesn't do a speaking fee. A lot of the time he doesn't charge. But they make it sound as though a student reached out, or even more, a fake event. Ooh, a fake event kind of situation. They reached out and they're like, hey, this fake event we've got going on. And he's like, yes, give me lots of money. And that's the big story. So when the Daily Mail asked Hollyhand for his comment on the fee, he denied receiving payments for speaking on campus, which he echoed in a statement to the Daily Beast, saying that he doesn't charge for travel or to speak at campus stops, but he does seek fees for large conferences which can be hosted at a university. The real damning detail to me in this particular story, or something is a little bit amiss, is that the Daily Mail does not assert, nor the Daily Beast assert, that they actually got in contact with Hollyhand personally to ask about a speaking tour thing at the college before they ran the story. According to the Daily Mail article that this Daily Beast article is written on, they don't actually share a lot of the details of the email. So it appears this is what happened. There are publicist agencies that coordinate a lot of major conservative speakers. People reach out to the public agency and they say, hey, I've got this event. Would this person like to come and speak? And then a representative looks at the file of whatever conservative or liberal or independent or non-political, whatever. They look at the speaker and they say, let's see, Jeff Goldblum, he's about $5,000 here. And then they say, okay, Jeff Goldblum, $5,000, that's what he needs. Is that what you want? And that appears to be what occurred here. It looks like the agency looked on the form, said, Brent Holohan, okay, here's the speaking fee. And then they sent it back. And now they're like, we've got him. Right now, there was a large amount of media individuals trying to perform, what's the best way to put this? Brain dead sting operations, where everything is a gotcha moment. And then they run it out as like, see, he's a big fraud and he's a grifter. Oh, we got him. No, that's not the case here. Also, it's really, really normal for conservative speakers who do go around and speaking on college campuses to take speaking fees. I have a rule for speaking fees regarding yours truly. If it is in state and it is in reasonable distance, like an hour or two from where I am, I usually don't charge because I kind of like to follow through on that I'm invested in the Indiana community. If it's more than 2 hours away, like I spoke up in Mishawaka once, which is near South Bend, we'll talk. And then, for example, I've been asked to speak at the Moms for Liberty Joyful Warriors conference. They are paying for my hotel room. The horror. Yeah, they're speaking fees for individuals all the time. How else is the kid going to make a living? If he's doing this for a living and he charges speaking fees to conferences and such, like the publicist makes that clear. You got him, I guess? Ooh.
How much does After hurt that their video expose, the writing expose, turned out to make him seem like horribly normal? Just completely reasonable.
I too am just deeply shocked. Oh no. I'm amazed constantly at how the media is trying as hard as they possibly can. And just to make people seem like everyone's got like this deeply malicious angle. And by the way, there's a couple of comments. It's like, what do you think about the kid in general? I've spoken to him. He's a nice guy. Well, have you watched a lot of his content? No, but that would be because, there's a lot of crap going on right now in the news. I don't sit there doom scrolling fellow conservative pundits and speakers, mainly because I've likely said half of the things that they have said that day. We joke about this often. If there's a point on our show that the next day on, for example, the excellent Michael Knowles show or the Ben Shapiro show, or something over on Megyn Kelly's show, or The Ruthless Crew, or Hugh Hewitt, Scott Jennings, whatever. If we're hearing something the next day, and it sounds a little similar to something, producer Nick and I will often joke that, well, maybe someone on their team was watching our show last night. Maybe. Who's
Please
to say?
Be true. Please.
I don't spend all of my time watching individuals speak on college campuses. That's kind of my take to answer that mail time question. I hope you liked that particular segue. Moving through from that point forward, I do want to get a couple of mail time questions. Apparently, a guy named 15% off a gift card at Applebee's, who is in our Discord and is a very on the spectrum individual who we're quite fond of. I can absolutely say that. I don't care if we get emails. I don't care at all. Anyway, Applebee's apparently wants to know my favorite ice cream. I not only have a favorite flavor, I have a favorite brand. Sundays in Indianapolis, near Fisher's. They've been operating since 1995. The best handmade ice cream in existence. It is divine. Everything from their key lime pie to their butter pecan. And I am an old man at the ripe old age of 30. I'm a very ancient, decrepit old geezer who loves butter pecan ice cream. Past that, the Kroger Private Selection brand salted caramel truffle. Really good. When I'm at Steak and Shake, which is quickly becoming the best fast food location in the country, yet again, Steak and Shake, reach out, sponsor. A Reese's milkshake is just divine. It is so good that even the strong bad emails reference a Reese's cup milkshake like 2 or 3 times. That's how delicious that is. So just a couple of the, very important mail time questions here at the end of the week. Another request has asked me to sing the chorus to my favorite song. I don't know if I'm going to do that right now, but my favorite song just of all time, I think, probably going to have to be a tie between Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Sting's If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, or The Dynamo of Volition by Jason Mraz. Those are three of my favorite. I'm not singing those. I'm sorry, not right now. No, it's not happening. It's not. Sorry, producer Nick. A very hearty thank you, though. Another question. Do I believe that Comey is actually going to be convicted, or is this all just for political show? Well, those are two separate questions. Is this for political show? Well, every single act of government is for political show. I really hate the idea that there is a class of politics which is apolitical. It doesn't exist. Government is inherently political, which means weighing how much time and effort you spend on certain things, like cultural issues, for example, or enforcing certain kinds of laws. Now, if we all have the same thing in common, hopefully like not letting dudes in little girls' locker rooms, well, then you would prosecute those instances when they arrived fully, because it's something we agree on. It's still political, but it's not something that we disagree on, so it doesn't come into the discourse of politics. As to Comey, yeah, I mean, it's a political move, absolutely. I am more so every day of the opinion that I do want the Trump administration to do their rootness tootness, to utilize the justice system to prosecute crimes that were maybe considered out of bounds for political individuals, things like mortgage fraud or lying before Congress. Yeah, those should be prosecuted, all sides of the aisle. Why? Because either we do the mutually assured destruction thing, or we end up in this place another 10 years from now. And to be clear, Donald Trump is the moderate. That's the funny thing. Trump, you actually press him on policy, and he's like, I just want people to like calm down. I'm the president of all Americans. Then I see someone like J.D. Vance, who is going to be the best president of the United States since 47. And he and Vice President Marco Rubio, I have no doubt that in the case of prosecuting crime in this country, that absolutely will be carried out as the Constitution intended. Producer Nick?
I mean, if he gets Marco Rubio, he won't need any Secretary of State or Secretary of War. You know, just give it all to Rubio. So it's kind of just a filled ticket right there. Easy job.
Last question for tonight. Tony, be careful. You might gain so much weight. Thank you. That's very true on the ice cream side of things. That's why so often I drink like 0 sugar sodas. I'm sorry. I'm not going to fearmonger about aspartame. I've spent too much time as a science teacher to trust Instagram influencers' health recommendations. That'll likely get me in some trouble as well. It's why, although I really do love like 70% of the things that RFK Jr. is doing, 30%, he's still selling me on them. We may get there. We'll see. I got an open heart. We'll see if Dr. Oz leaps through the TV, gives me a tax-free car from Oprah, and then some medical advice. We'll gather. As long as it's not the Neuralink injection, I think I'll be good in that line. Most honestly, this is a really, really important question. I think it's rather important. Is there any politician who I feel has been treated very unfairly over the last couple of years? This is by an individual whose name I can't pronounce because it's a lot of letters and consonants and numbers. It's like a Polish address. Is there anyone who I think has been treated way too unfairly that may not, again, by kind of the overlarge group? So you can say Trump, obviously, that makes sense. But I'm going to give you a hot take here. Who's been treated more unfairly by their own party and the American populace at large? Without a doubt, Mike Johnson. Without a doubt, it's Speaker Mike Johnson. He can't do anything right. They're always going to be mad at him because he didn't do one thing as Speaker of the House during the Biden administration. People are like, he has to do this. He's delivered on Trump's agenda a lot. He is an indie-fundy Baptist from Louisiana who does not bend the knee at a bunch of stuff. And he understands how the job works. He got far more accomplished than Kevin McCarthy before him. He gets no credit for that because everyone who hated Kevin McCarthy now also hates Speaker Johnson because there's one thing where Mike Johnson didn't, establish the conservative state of Jefferson or something. And I think that's unfair. I do. Now, by the way, does that mean he's perfect? No, not at all. But this weird idea that Mike Johnson deserves all of the ire. And by the way, he hasn't been on the show. He's certainly welcome. We're not buddies or anything like that. I think he has been treated unfairly because the left hates him because he's a conservative Christian straight white male. And then a lot of people on the right hate him because there's this idea that if we don't have like a Marjorie Taylor Greene as the Speaker of the House, oh dear Lord, then we've failed the Republic somehow. And that's just not the case. Yeah, it kind of sucks that New York Republicans are often squishes, as are California Republicans, but you do need them to cobble a majority. Otherwise, you have a very bad kind of gridlock that really does screw over a lot of things in the country. The Speaker of the House is the suckiest position on the face of this earth. You could not pay me all of the money and all of the acres of land. Well, no, not for all of the acres of land would I be Speaker of the House. That job sucks. It is the wheeler and dealer entirely. I believe Rebecca Downs is correct. If you want someone perfect in office, we got to wait for Jesus to come back. But he ain't going to run for office, Rebecca. No, the 1,000-year reign starts at the end of the 7 years of tribulation. I don't get to do Theology Thursday like Michael, but I'll talk about my premillennial, pre-tribulation Baptist eschatology some other time. With that, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Go touch some grass while it is still somewhat green. We'll see you real soon, that being on Monday. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.